Welcome to the Architect of Resilience podcast, where we explore the secrets of overcoming life's challenges and unlocking unstoppable strength through deep personal conversations and expert insights.
This is a rare opportunity for me to interview him. I am super excited about this. We were driving out to Elite FTS today and had really cool conversation about the synergy that he sees between different recovery modalities, his whole framework of thinking in terms of when he's building protocols for training, recovery, peptides, etc. And I couldn't be more excited because I get to unpack this on air with Chris, and I'll just let Chris take it from here. So building on the conversation that we have, you kind of have four focal points when you think about your framework. Could you explain those to people?
Yeah, so I think about it as four key unlocks to our physiology. And this goes, this isn't a peptide discussion. This is like in everything that you see me do discussion. So it relates to equipment design. It relates to, alternative methods like shockwave, PMF, red light, blood flow restriction, like just my thought process on how all these integrate in together and how do we create, a synergy and these non-redundant pathways to facilitate the same mechanism. So even supplement design. So I break things down into four different areas. So one we talk a lot on this channel is cellular. So this is fundamental cellular level, what's happening and improving that efficiency. And they're not in order, so it doesn't really matter, but neurologically. And so again, cellular could be peptides. It could be just the training, right? So changing the calcium signaling with, exercise, right? Neurological, that plays a role into like equipment design, things of that nature where we're changing an input to the brain by sending an input by how the load is placed. This is why the things I designed have load placement in unique places, because I'm playing with load to change the peripheral input in neurology into the brain. And it's also relates to, being able to have the diaphragm and pelvis relationship and the neurological and inhibition that comes into play from having joints in their respective conditions with the proper length tension relation of the muscles around that, because there's inhibitory signals. That's how compensatory patterns get kicked in. That's the protective mechanisms that start causing a loss of mobility. All of that plays into the neurological. So we've got cellular, we've got neurological, then we've got biomechanical. So biomechanical also does relate to like physically, the physical placement of the joint, the fascial tissue, the muscle insertion, the movement pattern itself, right? So you're going to see things like that in the Lift Lab product, for example, where we're looking at those movement patterns. And the last one I call hydrodynamic. So it is literally like the movement of fluid. So hydrodynamic might relate more technically to vascular, but I'm thinking about as a whole, the movement of nutrients as well, to fuel the muscles. So that's, glucose uptake. Again, you might be able to, that's different than the cellular level, right? The shuttling of, because along with that is the water that comes with it, the cellular hydration, right? The removal of the waste products from the muscle. It is the vascular flow as well. Like it is all that movement of that throughout the body. And so this is where things get really interesting when you break that down, right? So hydrodynamic, cellular, neurological, and biomechanical, right? So these things all can play a compounding role, right? So let's say we take some products like BPC 157. Mm-hmm. It's going to create angiogenesis. So that's, the formation of, new microcapillaries, right? It's going to increase, nitric oxide production in that area. It's going to bring more fluids to it. So it's going to have a little bit of, a hydrodynamic, but a pretty minimal effect on that, right? Now, if we integrate that with vasoblitz, so a high level of nitrate products, one, now you're going to open the capillaries in that. You're going to stimulate more blood flow into that area. You're going to feed more nutrients. So we've got, at a cellular level, some organizing and signaling for repairs, but now we're pushing the fluids and the nutrients physically from there, carrying that out. Well, now we could mix in other components. This is where blood flow restriction may come in, right? So the blood flow restriction, again, is going to be a driver of some of those hydrodynamic forces, but also send some of the signaling, signaling growth hormone release, stem cell release within that. And so they just keep, in that way, we're triggering some of the same mechanisms, but they're different pathways. So they're able to build upon each other. And so just same thing, I could also pair like PMF, pulsed electromagnetic frequency, which is going to create some opening and closing of those microcapillaries to flush that regardless of, the heart pumping, but that mechanism itself reaches some of that hard to reach tissue. And so there's just like, we start building upon, all these different mechanisms, just like, from a neurological standpoint, we've talked about compounds that improve, neurogenesis, like improving peripheral nerves if we've got, some issues going on that are impacting that. At the same time, we can trigger neurological functions via some of the loading, via movement patterns, and start turning some of those things on and off. So that has been like my framework for like how I look at things and why you see this compounding and use of different tools. So like my Superhuman healing protocol, if we dig into that, and that's a good one to pair off of because that's one where you can see a lot of these things come into play. So you'll see the use of the shockwave tool, right? And I'll use the shockwave tool post injection of the peptides. One of that is just to physically like drive those peptides deeper. The other is it's also creating some angiogenesis in that direct area, which we then also stimulated via different mechanisms with the peptides. Yeah. We've got, the vasoblitz, which is again increasing nitric oxide and blood flow. But then I've also enhanced that locally with the shockwave at the same time. And then in the recovery modality, you've got, again, red light, PMF, that PMF, again, is facilitating some of those hydromechanical, but again, both of those are primarily focused on the mitochondria and upregulating that cellular function. So this is why you see a lot of and I think sometimes people get confused, like, hey, you're all over the place with these. You've got a supplement company, you've got, I was designing equipment, you're in peptides, but it's putting all these together. You can really accomplish some fascinating things, and there are different ways of attacking that physiology. They're just different, I think, of keys of just unlocking the secrets to just blow that up and creating what I call these non-redundant pathways. So instead of just like, how do I attack this with more of the same? Like I can't add more blood flow restriction. There's only, so many different pathways with the peptides, but then I can start attacking it from these other different pathways that are, when I break those into those different key unlocks, because that when we're doing things in the cellular place, it's not overlapping with what we can do in the neurological direct or the biomechanical or the hydro. Yeah.
Let's dive into the world of optimizing your overall health. With pushing my physical limits, I encountered significant reductions in my health, and I reached out to Merrick Health. As the premier telehealth service, I loved their personalized health coaching from the comfort of my home. They empower you with the choice of self-service diagnostic labs, or what I chose, the guided optimization with expert interpretations of blood work, health coaching, and with medications delivered to my door. Merrick Health is your partner in optimizing your health. Listeners can seize a fantastic 10% discount off their first blood work with code RESILIENCE at merrickhealth.com. That's code RESILIENCE for 10% off.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. It's almost like a crude analogy, but like when I think about training, for instance, you have your stimulus lift, heavy, fast, recruit a lot of motor units, but then you have to fatigue those to get that training adaptation. And what you're describing is like kind of like the same sort of synergy there. You have something that's sending a signal, you have something that's using that signal in a different way, a couple things that are using that signal in a different way. So your body's really learning how to use these things in a more complete manner. And as you said, without the redundancy in place, you're not essentially hitting a wall and then just continuing to run into the wall.
Yeah.
You're smart enough to sidestep and run to the next wall. And by kind of hitting all four walls, so to speak, or locks, you really, it seems like you'd never really tap out in terms of ability to adapt to a stress, that one of those is always going to be locked, and you're always going to have the right tool with the ingenuity that you have, the products that you've created to unlock that. And it's just kind of almost like you just go around, you figure out which one of those is still locked, you unlock it, walk through it, and then when somebody decides to lock that other one, you just come right back out, unlock it. And
I've quit making progress with this. But yeah, even the training. So we talk about training. So some of the tools, when I use the leverage-based products, it's not just for the neurological, but it also allows the ability to keep a continuous load or to combine multiple exercises together. What does that do? That allows you to push into that deep state of fatigue much further, just like you would with the BFR, and also send, again, some of that same signaling messages on that cellular level when we're able to just like within our hands, like if I'm using a flywheel, where I'm able to just continue to push into those realms. So yeah, it's really fascinating what you can accomplish. And that's where you see some of those case studies that I've done, like in the Superhuman healing. Again, I don't have a whole lot that I can present because it's a person's public information as far as that. So it's like, those are, people that have allowed me to do that. But you can look at those case studies and see like, hey, that's not possible. Well, you dig into it, you can see that they've been using that it wasn't just a peptide injection. Like we were doing numerous of these pathways, stacking those together to be able to get somebody from, a normal standard of care where, they're able to walk in 2 years or able to walk in 6 months and, 40% chance that they'll be out of pain and stiffness in 2-year time frame, to, oh no, they're learning to walk. 7 weeks later, they're deadlifting 700 pounds. A few weeks after that, they're deadlifting, in the competing in the 0.0001% of the population for strength, right? How do you do that? Like, that's impossible. Trey Mitchell, strongman, had potentially, career-ending Achilles tear at the strongman games down in Austin, the Rogue Invitational, and we did his protocol. He was back on the platform, hitting PRs, shortly thereafter with, no issues. Like, it's things that you shouldn't be able to accomplish and able to do in very short periods of time, working those different pathways.
Makes perfect sense. I've always admired your thought process, and I mean, I can validate firsthand. I know my injuries, and you were generous enough to share recovery advice with me. And I mean, I had a pec tear, and I was back to benching. I mean, my problem was like I got strong and better so much faster that I rushed into it without. I was like, everything Chris told me worked. I'm ready to go back at it, and I'm, able to do the weight. But then, stupid me, I ended up injuring myself because I didn't do the rest of the protocol because you heal so fast. But it's really incredible. I mean, the way you look at things, and I think the science world's just starting to unpack this. When we talk about like quantum biology and quantum physics and the role it plays in healing, there is so much interconnectedness that we are just now beginning to be able to articulate and identify. And the system you put together seems like it's it's put together a lot of those pieces, and that's probably definitely a reason why it's so successful. So I think an interesting question that I certainly have, I'm sure a lot of other people have, when somebody comes to you and you've got these four tenets essentially, what's the thought process in identifying sort of a target, and how do you pick the tools?
Yeah, good question. A lot of this is, so we identify the issue, and then I'm going to look at, okay, here's the target objective that we want, and building those, stacking those each of those tools on, it really becomes, it's more of a matter of the person's willingness or opportunity to be able to do those. So again, like my case study shows some pretty extreme accidents, like getting both quads torn off, or you know, being pulled out of a sport that is your livelihood, and so it really more comes down to, once you understand all those pathways and the things that you can do, is, you know, what is the willingness and the reasonableness for this to fit in your life?
Yeah.
Because it could be a lot of different tools, but it also allows us to go, okay, what tools do you have to work with to be able to do that? So XYZ doesn't work, but we've got this over here that we can pick as well. So for me, it comes down to a more of a framework. So I use it as it's a framework for me to understand the things that I can employ, and then fitting that to what works with a person's lifestyle and availability, and then what we tackle now and then add later on, right? Hey, we're going to tackle some peptides and some blood flow then maybe we'll add some blood flow restriction later. Maybe we'll add some flywheel training at this point in time as we pull this other component out, right? So you could also pair that in a periodization fashion as well. Which, it's because it can be a lot, right?
Yeah.
So again, those case studies where I'm using all of that is those extreme circumstances, but this is, and I don't have the case studies that I can present, but same time of like taking people from, not even being able to squat their body weight 1 week, and, being able to go out and, win a national title, 2 weeks later or a week and a half later, which I've been able to do repeated times, but oftentimes that's only with local clients.
Yeah.
That can come to my house, and I can do a lot of these modalities because I have those different equipment. For me, it's like a framework of my thought process of how I have gotten involved and built those protocols and all those things. Like if I'm looking and thinking about a certain process, how I've gone down these pathways of also being involved and using these other modalities instead of being the BFR guy.
Yeah.
BFR is the answer for everything. Well, that's a pathway.
Yeah.
Here's some others. So that's why
Sure.
I've never been able to fit into a bucket. And so it's more me explaining kind of the framework for my thought process, and then why I do the things that I do as well.
Yeah, I think there's hearing you explain it, I mean, it makes perfect sense. And there's clearly like a lot of structure to the thinking process. And what I love about it too, is it is scalable. That if I'm envisioning it, it's sort of like I picture 4 buckets, and you probably got 100 tools in each bucket. And you're going to have some situations that come up that the guy says, hey, I got to be back to my sport in 2 weeks. So you're probably going to grab more of those tools out of the buckets. But you might also,
I don't want to do injections.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to do some topicals. We're going to do this, this, and this.
Yeah.
Or easiest is, hey, I got some peptides. They work. Like, here's how you're going to do that. Yeah.
And I think too that that really sort of solidifies the value of having a coach like you, or you specifically, in fact, that has taken the time to learn about all these different things. Because what I found is there's coaches that are really good at training. There's coaches that are really good at nutrition. There's coaches that are really good at supplements. There's coaches that are really good at rehab work, whatever. But it's rare that you really see somebody that's taken the time to put the pieces together, and not just put the pieces together, but I mean, you've learned from the best in the world, and the knowledge that you have and how you've been able to take the knowledge from the top people and put it into a system is really unprecedented. I mean, you're doing groundbreaking stuff, and results speak for themselves.
Thanks. That means a lot, because I do truly think that is my differentiation. There's people that know peptides better than I do. There's people that know BFR better than I do. There's people that know a lot of these things, but I do feel that I have a unique ability and able to see the connectedness and how to play with all of those different things together. And so, yeah, hearing you say that and recognize that's cool.
No, I really mean it. And, it's funny, I've had people ask about my thought process and everything. And I tell them, I'm like, anywhere, any conference I go to, I'm the dumbest guy in the room. And I do that on purpose, that I don't have all the answers, but what I have is the ability to put concepts together. And really, I think a lot of how I model that comes from seeing the stuff that you're doing. And, you're not going to be an expert in every single thing, but you can go find the experts, you can learn from them, you can extract the relevant information within the context of people that you're going to be working with. You can build your own system. It's really, I'd say you and I are modern day Bruce Lee's. And, he created his own system, and he did that by finding all the best systems out there, taking the parts that worked for him, and thinking about the situations he was going to be using them in, and always having the right tool for the job.
Yeah.
So, if people are going to have a takeaway from the interview, I think, one, I mean, obviously talk to you, like, you're a wealth of knowledge, and it is so cool to hear the thought process behind the system. And two, for people that are getting started, or even people that have been doing this for a while, like, when you look at people that are successful, success leaves cues. Go learn from the best people. But it's not about parroting what they do. It's about being able to take the parts that are relevant, the parts that are meaningful, the parts that you're going to be able to use, and finding the other parts you need, and then building your own system. Like, we're all brilliant people. We all have a unique lens we look at things through. And when you embrace that, and when you make the effort to go learn, I mean, one, it's a blast. Like, I'm sure you're the same way. I have so much fun, like, learning from people like you, and when I get to go learn from people. And two, like, you're going to be the problem solver. You're going to have answers, and that opens doors. You're going to connect with other people that have answers, and the more of those people you connect with, the more problems get solved. So
yeah. No, I agree. Yeah. And I was just thinking, as you're talking through that, I'm on, like, going, if somebody came to me for peptide advice and I see that it's a neurological component, like, I was on the interview with Dave Tate, and he's like, what about the people that they take some BPC and TB500, it doesn't work? I'm like, well, what was the issue? Right? And I'm like, it could be completely something that we're going to address via, like, something I might take from dynamic neuromuscular stabilization and some neurological resets. Well, I'm the only person that's going to be able, you come to for peptide advice, might actually put you up in a, a tripod set or something else, and cue a neurological reset and go, hey, this is what we needed, because that peptide is not going to do anything. So.
I think it's so important to have that 1,000-foot view. That it's funny, you go on the internet, and to your point in Dave's story, you read about people that, I took this and it didn't work, or I took this and it was a miracle. And for me, like, when I look at those situations, the common thread, I mean, if you take the obvious out of there, like, I mean, it might be a sourcing issue where they just didn't get the real thing. But if you take that stuff out of there, like, what else are they doing, and have they identified the right target? And that's why, I think when people think about hiring a coach, there's that temptation to think, like, I don't need to buy, like, these peptides are more expensive than these. They're all peptides. I can do what this coach is doing. I'll just go on Reddit and read it. And not saying there's no good, cheap peptides out there. There's no good information on Reddit. But the reason you invest in a coach, the reason that there's so much value when people work with you, myself, other professionals, is really just the ability to see that whole picture. somebody comes to you with like Achilles issue, obviously there's immediate issue that anybody could identify. Hey, I got a Achilles injury, but what else comes with that? And your system really addresses all those things. So do you want to be the guy that Dave Tate's talking about that, hey, I read Chris's protocol and I did 2 of the things on there and I didn't get the outcome? Or do you want to actually have somebody that can identify it and say, there's a lot of good information in this protocol, specifically these are the levers we're going to pull on, and then you get the outcome you want?
Yeah, and speaking of free information, much better than Reddit. Check out the school community, chrisduffin.com. It's absolutely free, but we've got tons of articles on there. Absolutely phenomenal. Plus, massive amount of videos, I think 1,800 videos, 300 plus hours of education. Most of that is behind a paywall for $30 a month, but there's a lot of it, enough to keep you busy for months, probably for free. So yeah, check that out. You can ask us questions there as well.
It's an amazing community, and the amount of free information on there and the amount of activity on the discussion boards. Like, I'm in a number of communities, and you really developed an active community where people are excited about helping each other. People are bringing a lot of different experiences to the table. I mean, there's tons of information about any topic you're interested in around health, and it's free. I mean,
yeah. So join us, and thank you for the interview. Appreciate it.
Thanks for letting me interview you.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Tex, if you want to build more physical resilience in your life, you need to start with a firm foundation. That's why I only wear barefoot shoes. Their wide toe box, zero drop heel, and flexible frames allow me to comfortably strengthen my foot every day while promoting optimal body mechanics, postural alignment, and movement. Listeners can get 10% off by using the code RESILIENCE at barefoot.store. That's BEAR foot.store for 10% off with code RESILIENCE. Start improving how you move today with barefoot shoes.